to structure a particular narrative and make nations take positions about religious freedom in Bharat, which is contrary to the reality. What we will share with you tonight is a report, a minority report that's been compiled by an agency that aims to set the narrative right. The Center for Policy Analysis has worked tediously to compile the entire minority report across 110 countries, including Bharat. And here are some of the observations that stand out. In terms of inclusiveness, in terms of diversity, in terms of ensuring that there is minimal state restriction on any particular person, India scores above all. That is the aspect that now the world is also recognizing, led by the very nation within whom there are entities who are trying to script this anti-India narrative. Let's first take you through the highlights of this minority report. India, the most inclusive nation for religious minorities, as per the report by the Center for Policy Analysis, and it's called the Global Minority Report. It goes ahead and tracks the status of minorities across 110 countries. Secondly, India non-discriminatory on religion. Thirdly, India's constitution is the only one with special provisions for minorities. There is no ban on any sect in India, unlike in many countries. Just in our neighborhood, Ahmadiyas are not recognized even as Muslims, but their seat is in Bharat. The Ahmadiyya seat is in Punjab. Parsis, Udwada, the Irancha, Zaim, more than 1,000 years protected in Bharat and still now rests in Udwada for the Zoroastrians. Many more stories like that. India may be used as a model by the UN for other nations, and India must rationalize policy to avoid conflictual situations. The other aspect, it cites the obligations of minorities to safeguard national interests. So, you have minorities have rights, but don't minority have a duty towards the country, towards the state? That has also been spoken about. They also talk about minority certificate, minority compliance certificate, or MCC. Nations who are not minority rights compliant, minority safety compliance, should not have the right to point fingers at nations who are. That is a strong point that's also been made. Let's try and understand what the aims and significance of this minority report is. First up, it sensitizes organizations, entity, policy makers, and of course other nations, people sitting there, on religion-oriented discrimination in many countries. It also reflects concerns of various religious communities. Thirdly, it's the first report by a non-Western nation with indexing on key parameters. It's not just randomly selected parameters which are picked up to suit a particular agenda or narrative. These are select parameters which apply to all and specifically focusing on minority rights, their welfare, and of course the rights, their safety in these nations. Overall approach is curative in global interest. It is not to put any nation down or to project any particular agenda or work for a particular ecosystem. So are we finally setting the narrative right? That's the big question. We also have one of the people who has put in a lot of effort behind compiling this report. But before we go across to our panelists, ladies and gentlemen, here is a big development. Remember back in June, the USCIRF report, we've got our guests. Let's say hello to and namaste to all of them first. We've got Ambassador Deepak Vora, former diplomat with us. Uday Mahurkarji, the Chief Information Commissioner and also author of the book on Veer Savarkar, is with us. Durga Nand Jha, he is part of the Center for Policy Analysis. He's the Executive Chairman of the CPA, and Zeba Zoaria, activist. Namaste, Jai Hind to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. But before we start this conversation on the report, here is a big development. In June, Antony Blinken had raised his concern of religious freedom, citing the Yusuf report. But now, America has released a latest freedom report. And in this, what's happened is that they have rejected the Yusuf agenda. They have removed India from the countries of particular concern list. So contrary to what the USIRF, which quite literally has copied the 2021 text and put it in the 2022 report, and they've just deleted one paragraph, they have said no. What their America's official position as of now is India home to a great diversity of faiths. 12 nations, including China, Pakistan, Myanmar, have been designated under this list of countries of particular concern. India had rejected outright the 2021 USIRF report as motivated and biased. It had also said that such reports stand no meaning if they are devoid of fact. And now US has turned around and it has also corrected the narrative, rejecting the USIRF agenda. So we'll talk about USIRF in a bit, but first let's go ahead, let's go across and to our guests, and I'll start with Durga Nand Jha. Durga Nand ji, please take us through the modus of collating and putting this report. There's a lot of work that's gone behind. 110 countries have been profiled and India is part of it. Tell us, how did you go about it and how has it been received so far? You put this report out on the 29th of November.
Namaskar.
Namaste.
We studied constitution of 110 countries, and we found that no other countries in the world give so much right to their religious minorities as India is giving. Second thing, we found that India is a non-discriminating country. It is not discriminating against its religious minority in any manner. Third thing, we found that India is inclusive in the sense that there is no barrier for religious minority in India to reach to the top position of the country, to become a head of the judiciary, to become a head of the armed forces. There are precedents for all such things. Fourth thing, we found that India's model is so pro-minority that UNO should declare it as an ideal model, and every country should be told that they should copy India's religious minority model.
So these are,
and we also express some concern. Like existence of OIC. A religion-based organization like OIC, it communalizes international relations. So we think that the UNO should take a stand on it, and it should suggest its member countries that they should not take membership of such kind of communal organizations, because today Muslims have formed OIC. Tomorrow Christians may form like other organizations. In the past we have a history of crusade. What will happen? Next thing, we also advocated that India should ban religious conversion, because we think that religious conversion is the worst form of religious intolerance. Why you want to convert anybody? Because you are not ready to tolerate them.
So when you say you want to ban religious conversion, you are talking about forced or fraudulent conversion. Because if somebody wants to convert or adopt a particular faith of their own free will, you can't stop them.
Yes. No, religion must be an individual right. I only advocating that on a group basis it should not be converted as a group rights.
Now you make an interesting point. I'll come back to you, Durga. Right. I have a few questions on this entire report, but I just want to take some opening comments from all our other panelists, and then I'll circle back to you. Uday Maurkarji, you were there when this report was launched and it was inaugurated, and I think the former Vice President Venkaiah Naidu ji was also present on that day. My question to you is, if they are saying that you need to have a minority compliance code and every nation should be minority compliant, if you're not minority compliant, then you have no business pointing fingers at any other nation. So it is like जिनके घर शीशे के हों दूसरे पर पत्थर नहीं फेंका करते. But in this case, nations which have decided that their state religion, they have already decided their state religion, they are already communal in nature. how can you then call them and check whether or not they are going to preserve minority rights? The moment you take a position that you have a state religion.
Anand, we have to go into history a bit. And I am quoting something which is very important for this report, you know.
Ji.
And the way minority rights have been handled across the world. You see, Muhammad Ghaznavi plundered Somnath in 1026. That time the ruler of Gujarat was Bhimdev Solanki. 70 years later, his grandson Siddharth Jaisingh, who was the maternal grandfather of Prithviraj Chauhan, he became the ruler of Gujarat. And in his time, Muslims had come to settle down in Gujarat in a place called Khambat, what you call Kembe.
Yes.
There was a clash between Muslims and Hindus, and in that one mosque was damaged by the Hindus. Siddharth Jaisingh, during whose grandfather's reign, a Muslim invader had plundered Somnath, broken the idols, acts in a manner which is astonishing. He orders for the repair of that masjid. So, all these allegations which were made against India all these years have been largely motivated. Our constitution gives special rights to the religious minorities. No constitution in the world gives special rights. They at the most give equal rights. So the time has come for United Nations to convene a conference on minority obligations. I think wherever they are, I am not talking about minorities in India. You see, the world has to define as to what will be the obligations of the minorities, the religious minorities. I mean, they should come forward and say that we will not take part in destabilizing activities. We will not become handle of hostile nations. And if that happens, then the state repression which we have seen happening against some of the minorities across the world will also be in control. If minorities know their obligations, naturally the clash between the state and the minorities become violent, or who become handle in the hands of hostile nations. If they don't become, then that clash is also, it will also narrow down, you know. So you have to understand, it's a very, because all these years, minority rights has become a political tool only, including at the level of UN. And therefore, the minority compliance certificate suggestion is a landmark suggestion. I think it has the power to trigger a global debate on this subject. What right Pakistan has to advise India? What right China has, which is committing all kinds of atrocities on the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province? What right they have to tell India? I am not saying that there are no excesses in India against minorities. There are once in a while. But the point is, India's constitution gives special rights to the minorities. You see look at the constitution of Pakistan. They are not, Hindus don't have equal rights. Ahmadiyas are almost banned. Therefore, this report is a great development even at the global level, and it has the power to trigger a global debate on this whole issue, which has become, you see,
how minorities are defined, interpreted is also interesting. One aspect of the report.
Minority rights is a very sensitive issue.
It is, and it is
there are minorities who are suffering in many countries. We need to look at it from a very rational point of view, from a very from a point of view which is based on truthfulness.
No, and not just that. At what percentage of the population do you remain a minority and then you cease to be a minority? 0.1% of the population is a minority, or 18% of the population is a minority, or it becomes the second largest majority. So this is also something which has to be defined. Who or what is a minority? And the aspect is, why only religious minority? What about ethnic minority? What about linguistic minority? Our constitution talks about linguistic minority too. I'll bring those questions out, but the Global Minority Report State Discrimination Index in this rates Afghanistan at number 1, followed by Maldives, Somalia, Iran, Egypt, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia at very, very high. China is at 15 at high. UK is at 76, Australia at 79, Canada at 81, USA at 104 and India at 106. So very low as far as state discrimination index is concerned. Ambassador Deepak Vora, high time this happened? Or would you say that because India is championing this, this is also biased?
Yes. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be on your amazing channel, sir. I learned so much from you. No wonder you're one of our best anchors, and thank you for letting me learn from the other wonderful people. What they have said is unexceptional. There's nothing that one can argue with that. May I just say that I'm delighted that we've released the first ever index by a developing country on the treatment of religious minorities in 110 countries. Bravo, Center for Policy Analysis, for a report based on meticulous research and information. Sir, the developed nations, God's chosen representatives on earth, have been coming out for centuries with annual reports on all kinds of stuff. Some of it is laughable. We have a poverty index, a hunger index, freedom index, child mortality, happiness index, toilet index, obesity index, safety index. Happy birthday, guys. Get serious, get real. The world is changing before their eyes, but they refuse to acknowledge the change. It is the worst kind of atavism, sir. The ghosts of Bartholomew Dias, Christopher Columbus, and that character called Vasco da Gama continue to run around. Sir, you probably heard of a racket called Human Rights Watch,
yes,
funded by very shady fellows. Last year, it said the government of India had adopted laws and policies that systematically discriminate against Muslims. Oh, happy birthday. How did you know that? Well, they quoted some of their highly paid Indian employees who first say, what would you like me to say, boss? And then the boss says, say this, and then they say it accordingly. And sir, they refer to the present government that I'm privileged to serve as a Hindu nationalist government. I can't stop laughing, sir. If we have a Hindu nationalist government, does Europe have a Christian internationalist government? I mean, the Muslim nations do not hesitate to wear their religion on their sleeves. Please see the report by the European Parliament, I think it was in May, which said that racial and ethnic minorities, religious minorities, face discrimination and its consequences on a daily basis. Sir, who in India does not belong to a minority? I am a Punjabi, so I'm a minority. I'm a Hindu, so I'm a majority. There are religious, ethnic, linguistic, cultural, regional, tribal minorities, and every Indian has multiple identities, and that's why foreigners get so confused. Let me just say, sir, that we are now setting the agenda, because today, India, sir, I'm referring to the G20, we are now, sir, both with the trade unions, the group of 77 developing countries, we used to scream against the developed world, but also with the developed world. We are the bridge, and we are best placed to hold a mirror to power and tell the West, guys, your time has gone. Now it's a time for true democracy at a global level, and we would like you to look deep inside yourselves before criticizing anybody else. All I can say, my own family, we have a Muslim bahu, we have a Christian son-in-law. We are very proud of them, sir.
Yeah, we are very proud of anybody and everybody who's part of our family and who makes this place their home. So that is how our approach has been. And those who make this their home, who embrace the culture of this aspect, of this nation which says Sarva Dharam Sambhav, saying that all roads lead to the same divinity, then there is no problem. It's the othering where the problem starts. And this othering is also done with India. Now, please, Ambassador Deepak Vora, before I bring in Zeba Zoharia and go back to Jhaji and also Udayji, this USIRF, how did it get so much of capital, especially if it is authored by a Pak origin activist with links to anti-India terror groups? The author, Iqtidar Chima, is known as a Khalistan backer. The findings seen as arbitrary and biased. There is zero transparency that happens. Let's just quickly look at this is who he is. And then the author, Iqtidar Chima, is known Khalistan backer. And they are backed by an entity which has nothing but enmity and hatred for India. This is all ISI backed. Findings seen as arbitrary and absolutely biased, zero transparency. Meetings are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. People with practicing Christian missionaries, deep links with Islamist fronts like the IAMC, like the IACSJ. These are all fronts, and they hold a record of anti-India agenda. Now, Ambassador Deepak Vora, how is it that such an entity, such a dubious entity, carries so much currency within the US policy making and in the corridors of power in the US, that the state home department cites it and treats it as genuine?
I would be surprised if it actually has an impact on American policy towards India. So, American interest is the dollar. Wherever they can make money, they'll sell their grandmothers, as somebody said. There is also this racket called the Sikhs for Injustice, or whatever it's called. You heard about it. They also go around making all kinds of claims. You're right that it is the intelligence service of our neighbor. I forget the name of that neighboring country. There's some Badmash there who claims to be Sharif and says, I'm the Prime Minister. They go around trying to promote this kind of thing internationally because we're in a globalized world, although there's a movement against globalization. Is it impacting, sir? This is something, give me another 30 seconds. Is it impacting the image of India? You've just seen the latest report, sir. We are on track for $100 billion foreign direct investment in India. The highest ever. $100 billion have been remitted to India by our sons and daughters living overseas. Would they do this in a country where there was political instability or minorities were not being well treated? We haven't done an analysis of how much of this money that is coming is from Sikhs or Muslims or other Christians living overseas. But you would be surprised, quite a substantial part, because India is there. What bigger lesson can you give? Within a democratic framework, we have allowed every culture to realize its potential. Sir, ours is an inclusive culture. It's not anything that is exclusive, and we are very, very proud of this.
Very well said there. Zeba Zuaria, this global minority report, is this egg on the face of those agenda drivers?
First of all, I'm quite happy to see that there is a counter narrative that is emerging out of from our country to all the various reports that are being excessively critical of India. And this is essential given that India's rising stature globally as one of the major economies, and also to make people aware of our rights of minorities in India and legal provision enshrined in the Constitution. It helps address many misconceptions about India, and this basically was the response from the MEA with regards to the use of annual report and some deliberate attempts by various vested interest of religious reasons, or that use such indices as a bargaining tool for some countries better deal in terms of their respective foreign policy. As far as the report goes, I'm reminded of the philosopher Karl Popper, who described the paradox of tolerance, which basically says that in order to maintain a tolerant society, the society must be intolerant of intolerance. So especially, essentially, if a so-called tolerant society permits the existence of intolerant philosophies, it is no longer tolerant. And I think in India, the majority community has tolerated this version of secularism and its excesses for a far too long. And coming back to the report, for me, the most interesting aspects includes that it contained a good primer initially on the difference in worldviews of how Eastern religions and philosophies and that of Abrahamic religions, and this fundamental differences, unless understood, will not help in bringing out a proper counter narrative, and hence I'm really glad that this has been provided in the beginning itself. Secondly, kudos to the effort of the author to do a comprehensive and detailed study of how the constitution of various countries compare and the legal rights enjoyed by minorities in various countries. This drives home several points already on how India has dealt with issues related to religious differences and managed them effectively to emerge as a diverse yet unified society. And to be honest, this is only possible, in my humble opinion, because of the acceptance that is enshrined in the India's civilizational ethos, such as Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Thirdly, the author and the report compares the Indian constitution with the 1992 UN Declaration on Minorities. And again, it is no surprise that the proposal made in the declaration have already been embedded in the articles of our constitution, such as 14, 15, 19, 25, etc., etc. And next, that I find really interesting about the report was that the indices such as the state religion neutrality index, state inclusiveness index, etc., and global minority index are all well defined along with the variables that have been incorporated for the analysis, and it is a robust measure and scientific in its methodology. And fourthly, the indices such as the state religion neutrality in the future, I think the scope of the report can also include how minorities in India such as Jain, Buddhists, Parsis, etc. feel in India, and including their anecdotal references to drive home the point further.
Fantastic suggestion. Jhaji, do you agree? You think that can be incorporated? Because this is to counter that narrative, like a Yusuf who defines India's caste system based on Hindu scripture. आप देख रहे हैं किस तरीके के narratives they push. So if we have to be scientific, we'll be scientific, but we should also have testimony that represents all those voices who are minority in our country.
Yes, actually, in one report you cannot include whole issues. There are so many issues. We cannot take up all the issues. Second thing, we have 2-3 important points. That first, multi issues should not be seen from a strategic perspective. It is a humanitarian issue, and it should be seen from humanitarian perspective. First thing. Second thing, we have advocated that every country should submit multi-rights compliance, how much multi-rights they have complied.
Yeah, MCC.
So any because of this, if every years in annual General Assembly meeting, if every country will submit their multi-compliance rights document, then no major violation will take place in any country of the world, because ultimately every year they will have to submit it, this thing. Third thing, that we see that in some countries blasphemy law is arbitrarily used against religious minorities. So UNO should also take a stand that blasphemy law should be prohibitory in nature, not much very punitive. In many countries there is a provision of capital punishment. Next thing, we found that many developed countries are religiously more in religious matters. They are more conservative than less developing countries. For example, in Italy, a non-Catholic cannot become head of the state, and these kind of things are in a constitution of many other countries. But in African countries, sub-Saharan African countries, they are very liberal in religious matters. Last thing I would like to say, that we adopted everything is very transparent. We adopted scientific method, so that no can question our methodology. Everything is thing is there, and we explained our technique in 11 pages.
No, that is important.
I think we should.
That is important because
proud.
Yeah, please complete.
We should take proud on this issue that we are the best country in the world.
No, there is no doubt about that, sir, because we have taught them how to do vaccine certificates. So अगर vaccine certificate भी हमने उनको digitize करना सिखाया, उनको नहीं समझ में आया, तो वहाँ से ही start कर लेते हैं. Now these reports, it is important. It is important because Uday ji, these are people who will say turn बहुमत की सरकार into electoral autocracy. They believe the problem in our country is electoral autocracy. So they have discounted the will of the people. They have discounted the entire democratic process and they want to call it electoral autocracy, and they have highlighted that as a problem. Udayji, can you hear me?
Yeah. No, this report is also important so far as the internal debate in this country is concerned on this issue. You see, lot of this friction which is happening between the minorities in this country, a section of minorities and the majority, is on the issue of propagation. Now, you see, right to freedom and right to propagate, these are two unconnected issues. How they have come into the constitution is a matter of research debate. It is, when propagation is being done with very unethical means,
Yeah.
with a view to convert, that creates a clash between the majority and the minority.
Yeah.
So I think the time has come for this country to look at the term propagation as you see it in the constitution.
Correct.
Because that is the reason of a large part of the incidents which take place, which end in clashes between the majority and the minority. So this report, if it has the strength to trigger a global debate, it also has a lot of stuff to trigger an internal debate.
Absolutely.
So you see, you have to understand one thing,
because sir,
Religious
how do you define
rights
minority?
is a very sensitive issue.
In our country, sir,
it is connected with humanity.
I agree, sir,
So
because in our
and-
country,
and-
the
and,
constitution
in
does
this
not
new
define
world order,
minority. With
in
our
this
own
new world
constitution,
order, we have to address.
yes, you talked about
Anand, listen to me.
everybody
In this
should
new
have the
world
right to
order,
practice.
we have to
Propagation is an
address this
issue. Minority
We have
in terms
to
of population
persevere
and also
to
definition as
to ensure that minority rights doesn't become a political tool for nations to settle scores with
sir, but in that case, sir,
hostile nations.
as CIC also, you have to take into cognizance that as per the constitution, minority is a state subject, because in each region, in each state, the minority definition will be different. The National Commission for Minority, making minority national itself is a fraud. The constitution does not envisage it. 2006 when National Commission of Minorities
Let the nation
happened,
debate.
you nationalized the whole concept of minority. Minority will be region.
What I am
28
saying is, let us debate this
Yes.
at the national level.
We must.
This report gives us an opportunity to debate this at the national level. Issue of propagation, issue of who should be called minority.
Yeah.
In a state, a community which is a majority in other states could be a minority in that state.
So it becomes a state
Kashmir, for
subject, sir.
example. Hindus are in minority in Kashmir.
Sir, then defining minority or linguistic, ethnic, tribal, and religious becomes a state issue. The moment you nationalize it, that's when the whole fraud happens. That's why today Hindus are a minority in 9 states in our country, but they don't have minority rights, despite the constitution enshrining right for minorities. Linguistic minorities don't have. So
let
this
there be
minority
debate on
debate
this.
itself has to be done nationally and globally. Ambassador Deepak Vora has changed the background while he's joining us to the Lotus Temple. Now that's also the Baha'i faith. Again a minority, its seat is in Bharat.
Sir, I was totally impressed with the eloquence of our CIC. He's absolutely outstanding. Just 15 seconds. This action that we have taken now, bringing out this report, I hope it becomes an annual exercise and many more such reports come out. This has come at the right time. You've heard of a person called Chanakya 2,400 years ago. He had said when the right action is not taken at the right time, then it is time itself that causes the action to fail.
Yeah.
And 170 years ago, another character called Victor Hugo had said, no power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. Sir, India's time as global Margdarsha, and I say this with a total sense of responsibility and pride, our time has come. Treatment of minorities is just one such concept that the world can learn from the Vishwaguru, also known as India.
Absolutely, and we have the art of Tarka Shastra, where everybody puts out their point and makes it so that collectively society develops and evolves. And that is what we should do. We need to debate. This report should also trigger an internal debate so that how more robust can we become as a country, while also pushing nations across the world and the United Nations to learn from Bharat. Very well said, and I hope this report travels far and wide. The scientific approach is something that all these agenda setters also learn from, and we try and change the discourse of how you put out a report also very soon. My commendations to Durga Nand Jha and to his entire team, Ambassador Deepak Vora, Uday Maurkarji and Zeba Zoharia. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We're going to take a very short break, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, is Twitter just the tip? Is it just one of the many platforms who are actually publishing houses? Social media platforms are the agenda driven. As we continue to explore the Twitter files, it's expanding, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us.
मेरे पूर्वांचलिया के हम धन्यवाद देव कि भैया जोन जोन बात बहिल जोन समझायल गई जोन रुआ लोग समझला वो रिजल्ट जोन देताड़ा वो खातिर हम हमारे समाज के धन्यवाद देव कि कमल के निशान पर विश्वास, हमारे मोदी जी पर विश्वास, भारतीय जनता पार्टी पे विश्वास बरकरार रखिए। देश का भला होता, देश का भला हुई, गरीब का कल्याण हुई, और ये वही पार्टी, गरीबों की एक ही पार्टी है, वो है भारतीय जनता पार्टी। ऐतिहासिक जीत हो रही है गुजरात में। हम लोग 140, 145, 150 भी हो जाएं, वॉन्ट बी सरप्राइज। हिमाचल प्रदेश भी हम लोग जीत रहे हैं। उपचुनाव जहां मैनपुरी में हुआ।
All right, we're going to go over now to our reporters who are also on the ground. We heard from guests, but now we want to bring you ground perspectives. My colleague Yash is with us right now. He's outside the BJP headquarters. He's been bringing us minute-by-minute updates. Yash, we want to come over to you to ask you this question. A little while earlier, our colleague Pallavi brought us an interview with Manoj Tiwari. The BJP seems to still be saying that they are neck to neck with the Aam Aadmi Party, even though most recent numbers, and I want to draw our audience's attention to the numbers we're flashing at the bottom of our screen. The most recent numbers seem to show that the Aam Aadmi Party is in a very clear lead over there, 133 versus 104. Yash, are you seeing that reflected in the BJP headquarters as we speak?
Well, Toya, BJP at this point in time doesn't have any other option but to showcase the optimism when it comes to these entire elections. And in fact, moments from now, Tarun Chugh also came here at Delhi BJP office, and in fact I'll show you certain visuals from here. People of the Bharatiya Janata Party are still quite positive. They are thinking that these elections could be turned with some with passing time, and in fact we've seen that results on certain seats are out, and in fact it's almost going 50-50. Some seats are going to the Bharatiya Janata Party, certain seats are going to the Aam Aadmi Party. Though still, both the parties are at loggerheads when it comes to the election numbers. And in fact, if we talk about the trends, definitely the trends are with the Aam Aadmi Party, and this is what the exit polls had indicated earlier also. In fact, a lot of senior leaders from the Bharatiya Janata Party are inside. In fact, the National General Secretary of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Tarun Chugh, also came a little while ago. And in fact, we see how BL Santosh was here, and Adesh Gupta is also well inside. When we spoke to him, he sounded very optimistic about the results, and he categorically said that it's gonna be Bharatiya Janata Party's mayor who will be at the helm of the affairs at the municipal corporation in the national capital. But it still remains to be seen whether the BJP could actually pull off these trends in their favor. And in fact, we have with us Yasir Jilani also, who is the spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Yasir ji, number kabhi udhar ja rahe hain, kabhi idhar ja rahe hain. क्या लग रहा है?
संपूर्ण रूप से भारतीय जनता पार्टी का एक एक देवतुल्य कार्यकर्ता जो है उसको विश्वास है कि दिल्ली में हमारी जीत हो चुकी है। नैतिकता के आधार पर अरविंद केजरीवाल एंड टीम हार चुकी है। जितनी बड़े बड़े दावे थे, जितना लैंडस्लाइड विक्ट्री की पिछले 34 से 48 घंटों से वो जश्न मना रहे थे, जनता ने नकार दिया है।
Over the next few minutes, we continue to track the MCD elections, the Municipal Corporation of Delhi elections. Remember, the BJP has been in power in the MCD for 15 years. This time, the Aam Aadmi Party is hoping to change that. They're hoping to wrestle away power from the BJP. Now, will they be successful in doing that? There's been excessive campaigning from both parties over the last few weeks, a particularly high decibel run that we've seen from both parties.
Shivam ji, aapse janna chahungi, I'd like to know from you. The Aam Aadmi Party says that what Delhi has got in the last 15 years, when you were administering at the MCD, is heaps and piles of garbage. Sanitation is a core issue in the national capital, and something that the BJP has not been able to take care of. I want you to talk about that particular civic issue of sanitation in the national capital, and what has the BJP done about it? Shivam ji.
I do agree that sanitation and cleanliness is the core issue of the Delhi Municipal Corporation. I don't shy away from doing so. But I do want to say that it is the BJP who has ensured that the landfill sites, the height of landfill sites was reduced by the BJP run MCD only. The landfill sites were probably cut down to quite a good meters by the BJP only. It was the BJP who ensured that the garbage was picked up from every household, and there was a ghar ghar kuda uthane ki yojana by the BJP only. It is the BJP who's been working for the Delhiites in amidst lack of funds being which were probably stopped by the Delhi government for quite some years now. And still the BJP has been working fantastically well in Municipal Corporation of Delhi, and that is how
Shivamji, there's a particular landfill site, the Ghazipur landfill site, and the so-called mountain of garbage which dominates the picture of Delhi. That's what the Aam Aadmi Party has been repeatedly talking about. They also say that you promised that you're going to bring it down, but you did not work on sustainable waste disposable mechanisms here in the national capital. Talk about that particular landfill site.
I don't respond to allegations, but I prefer to work on what I've done. If you want, I can take your camera team all across to the landfill sites where the height of the garbage has got reduced thanks to the plants being set up by the MCD. I don't need to probably counter on what allegations they are making. They all make false allegations, and that is how they have been into the politics since then. But I believe that my work for the past 15 years have been responded well by the people of Delhi, and this is how and this is why the BJP is again going to form a government once again in Delhi, and I think the
Thank you for staying with us here on The Right Stand, ladies and gentlemen. Twitter Files is still brewing, and Elon Musk has promised that Twitter Files 2 will be out very, very soon. It's taking some time, but in the meantime, this entire aspect of bias, agenda, seems to be spreading, and it's gone beyond just one platform. Were multiple platforms following an agenda. They were driven by a particular ideology, and if you are based and if you're backing yourself as an ideology, do you then stop being a platform and then do you become a publishing house? Now here's what happened. Elon Musk has gone ahead to attack Wikipedia. Now this is what he had said. He said most of the earth, the MSM is biased. Wikipedia, cite MSM source to confirm this claim. Wikipedia has a non-trivial left-wing bias. That's what he said. Why did he say this, ladies and gentlemen? He said this because there was a Twitter Spaces conversation that was going on, which was being championed by a journalist, and we'll go to that part, where they said that there was talk that Wikipedia is trying to look at deletion of a page that is covering the topic of Twitter Files because the editors have deemed it as nothing bigger or nothing as a nothing burger. That's what he's saying, with many claiming that the story isn't notable because mainstream media outlets did not provide it with significant coverage. So that's the basis with which certain people, and Wikipedia is trying to delete this entire aspect of Twitter Files and the conversation, despite millions of people sampling it, listening to it, and also understanding it over on other platforms, including Twitter. So mainstream media is being given as an example here. So that's why he's calling out the bias. The third thing is being a little tongue-in-cheek, and he says in the past, victory would mean that your enemies are no longer around. These days, they are not only alive and well, they have lots of time on their hands to edit Wikipedia. So that's the entire aspect of this narrative crowding by a particular ecosystem that ensures that only that aspect or that point of view of that ecosystem is pushed, and this is being termed as left-wing or left bias, the neo-left bias, the left-liberal bias. There are multiple terms for this, but the idea is that if you are a platform, should you have an agenda? And if you have an agenda, do you then remain a platform? That's the question that we are asking, exposing brazen bias by these so-called neutral social media platforms. Dr. Makarand Paranspe, Professor JNU and political commentator, is with us. Neeraj Atri, author Brainwashed Republic, is also with us, and we should be joined by Pattai Suresh Krishnamurthy, board member of Kohana very soon. Namaste, gentlemen. Jai Hind. Thank you very much. Makaranji, if platforms, are they neutral or are they biased? Is Elon Musk doing this for business, or is he exposing some of these narrative setters who wanted the world to think only in one way?
I think it's both. He's a very smart businessman, but what he's doing is a very important corrective. You know, the important thing here is not that you can be completely without bias. There is no media house, no media professional, no intellectual who can claim to be without bias, because some sort of cognitive slant or cognitive inclination is hardwired into our very perception. But the problem is when you claim to be neutral, as Wikipedia did, as Twitter did, and they had these elaborate rules and regulations, and then you found that they were only targeting individuals or people, groups of a particular dispensation or leaning, supposedly. In fact, I got deplatformed on Twitter, which is amazing because I never broke any rule. And my Wikipedia page was constantly full of distortions, hacks, and somebody would go and fix it in the sandbox, and it was all the corrections were countermanded by some editorial group. And this is a fact. Larry Sanger talked about it when he quit Wikipedia, and the Twitter files are making this bias absolutely clear, not only with Hunter Biden, but just think, Anand, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's the tricontinental nexus or network. Something's happening in the US. I mean, they're supporting the Democratic Party. They kicked out Donald Trump from Twitter. Then in UK, they are censoring news on the Leicester hate attacks on Hindus. In India, we know, True Indology is one of the several handles, so-called popular handles, which have been, completely knocked out. And every time they come back, they're once again deplatformed. And look at BJP spokesperson Tuhin Sinha. His Wikipedia page was taken down. For what? Apparently he supported or said something in praise of the Kashmir files. So this constant sledging has to be exposed. And I think what Elon Musk is doing is fantastic, because people have a right to know. I want to add one more thing, which is that Twitter has a lot of fake handles. They are bots. They are controlled by algorithms. So you don't know if there's a real person at the other end, if there's a troll, or if there's a BOUGHT or BOT. Both of them.
Bot or bot. In
bot
fact,
or bot.
Yeah, in fact,
And
interestingly,
the
there
final
is a
thing I
case
want to say
going
is-
on
I
in our
just want to
courts.
say- Exactly. I just want to say one little thing, Anand, which is simply that the public has a right to know. If somebody is a paid handle, other people need to know that, right? Or if they have been boosted, by paid followers, people need to know. I also want to know. I have 100,000 followers apparently on Twitter. I don't know if half of them or more are real or fake. So what I'm trying to say is that what Musk has done could be a great contribution to global democracy if it's an exchange between real people. Thank you.
No, like there is a case which has been filed by, and Vineet Goenka, although he was with the BJP, but as an individual he had filed this because Twitter actually promoted referendum in 2019. They promoted it. They took money from SFJ to promote it in India. So that's a secessionist activity. And even if they were being weird, that's his charge and that's his allegation that he is making. I'm quoting him, where he said that they were aware of what they're doing. So officials of Twitter based in India were aware of what they were doing, but they went ahead and did it. Now that is something which is a cause for concern. Now if they were deliberately doing it, sitting in India, operating as a neutral platform while promoting those who want to, have a secessionist intent with India and who are doing it at the goading of the enemy, then we have a problem. But like you have said, if you're a platform, you allow everybody the same volume. You allow everybody the same voice. But if you're a publishing house, then you decide, I will mute you and I will allow you to play. Then don't call yourself neutral. Neeraj Atri.
Yes, Anand. What you're saying is an ideal case where it should be happening, that when we are talking of a publishing platform, we we assume it to be neutral, but what we often tend to forget is that we are in a narrative war. On one side is what we call the forces of civilization, and the other there are forces which are totalitarian in nature. And whatever may be their nature, what we have to remember is that platforms like Twitter, they have millions of bucks behind them, and when such a huge amount of money is at stake, it has to be recovered from somewhere. I don't know how Elon Musk is going to do it, but previously, if there was a for every platform, it is valid that when you are running it ostensibly as a neutral platform, you are going to have your agenda. Like Paranjpe right now said that you cannot be totally neutral. And like him, I was also amused when he said that he had been deplatformed from Twitter. I also suffered the same fate. But the point is that, as you rightly mentioned, that this is a very serious problem for us, because it is a fit case in which a person or a group of persons who were fit to be in a lunatic asylum, they wriggle in their way to be able to acquire a position where they can have the power to dislodge apparently the most powerful man on earth. I say apparently because they were able to block and virtually unseat the President of the United States. That is the power we are talking about. And that is why it is a very serious issue. And coming back to the war that we are facing, I generally say that we are in a perpetual war in the forces of evil and good, what we normally call a Surasur Sangram. And what they've done is, now before the advent of internet and especially social media, the entire communication used to be one-sided.
Yeah.
All that a despot or a tyrant had to do was to put a band of his hand-picked intellectual henchmen at the positions from where he could control the narrative and, by extension, the mind space of unsuspecting masses. Internet came as a disruptor. It democratized it and balanced the playing field up to some extent. But this sordid saga, what you call as Twitter files, is a proof how the forces of evil are hell-bent on nullifying the democratization, and a bunch of control freaks, I would call them control freaks, because they were trying to manipulate the mindset. And even that can be tolerated if it is to the end of having something very genuine or very humanly in mind. But unfortunately, that is not even the case.
No, it's not being done for the betterment of society or evolution, Neeraj. What's being done, it is to try and push a particular ideology or for a certain amount of money to say, listen, this is how we can control the narrative for you. You pay me money, I'll do it. If you don't pay me money, I'll cancel you out also. So that is something which is dangerous. How do we protect ourselves against that? Patai Suresh Krishnamurthy, Elon Musk, is he doing it for business, or is he making a point that there are those who will have an agenda and who want to cancel you out? They may call themselves very liberal, open-minded, but largely what they want to do is cancel you out.
Yeah, well, I have been in the United States for about 35 years now, and I have seen politics kind of go through this phase. Everywhere in the world, media always has tried, the fourth estate in general has always tried to influence the outcome of political elections, whether it is Fox News taking one side, whether it is MSNBC taking another side, and so on and so forth. I think the danger with what was going on at Twitter was it was happening outside of public view. Everybody knows Fox News's position, everybody knows MSNBC's position, but nobody expects Twitter to have a position, right? And because there is no transparency to what it is that they're doing, people cannot make informed judgments. If a politician were doing this, then they are subject to elections and they are subject to, reckoning in the public domain. What Twitter has been doing and what Facebook did in 2016, this is not anything new. Social media has been doing for some time now, is they have been the behind the scenes, transparent, hidden player influencing electoral outcomes one way or the other. I think what Musk is doing is two things. One, he's trying to give Twitter a higher level of respectability and transparency, so people come to trust it as a neutral provider, and that makes them more attractive from an advertising perspective, because advertisers can now choose. They know that it's fair and they can choose. So that's certainly one thing. Now, how far do we go with Musk saying that he's a big fan of freedom? I mean, look, he's a businessman like everybody else. He's trying to make a buck, which is fine, which is what we do in the capitalist system. But I think the biggest game changer is that he's making it transparent. He's making, if there are any biases, it's transparent. You know what it is, and then you can make your decision. So I think that's a very, very good thing, that the overall electorate and the users are now informed that there was at least bias, and so people can plan accordingly. And that transparency, sunshine, is the sunlight being the best disinfectant, is exactly what this is.
No, but
I think Facebook is pretty much facing the same thing, of a lack of trust, because they took sides in private. That's the danger. When a very large company, which has so much power, takes a position in private, it becomes an issue.
See, amplifying one voice because you're taking money from them is one aspect, but to try and dial down the other, deliberately suppress the other, that's something that you're not expected to do. And you have to allow a certain amount of organic, churn, which if you are a platform, typically on a platform, anybody and everybody is the same. The platform treats everybody equally. Here, that's not happening. With Wikipedia, that's another thing which Elon Musk is trying to come out and say, that it's a nothing burger. So what was not picked up by mainstream media should not be there on Wikipedia. By that measures, a lot of things should not be there at all. Makaranji. So what?
Absolutely.
We don't trust any platform, or are we helpless against these platforms? Where do you see ourselves?
I don't think we're helpless at all. I think we need to be better informed, more critical, and keep demanding information and keep making these platforms accountable, because ultimately it's our money, it's the time we spend on them that makes them tick, that makes them bucks. So I just want to go back for a moment to what Atriji said. I completely agree that we are in a narrative war. And I saw that when you flashed a picture of Vijaya Gadde. I realized that when she was standing with a bunch of people holding a placard, somebody was holding a placard, "Smash Brahminical Patriarchy."
Yeah.
And I was wondering, why wasn't there a placard, "Smash Islamist Patriarchy"? People are cutting their hair, they're being tortured for not, veiling themselves properly in some parts of the world. We know what's going on. But why is it slanted in one direction? And in a way, that was a wake-up call for me. I saw the whole platform as being contaminated, and this is the contamination we should resist. And I got onto Twitter only so that people got to know of my articles. Sorry to put it in that fashion. The fact is, you write for a particular paper, not everybody reads it. So my friend said, just put it in a public space, right? But then I got involved in this narrative war myself, because I felt that there was something really wrong going on Twitter, and many people were being targeted. And then you ended up getting involved. Then you also ended up getting trolled badly.
Yes.
So to come back to the main point, I think that all these platforms are training for democracy for the younger generation. We shouldn't shy away from engaging with them, but keep demanding accountability, keep counter-checking. And it's not just fact-checking, which has become an industry, thanks to the fake news. But I think the deeper worry is how brainwashing and propaganda are being magnified and amplified, at a level and scale which is unimaginable.
But how do you do that? You cannot take anybody to court. You cannot change anything. It's all given as an aspect of algorithm. Suddenly, content that you put out becomes branded as sensitive, and you're surprised. Whereas there is far more vitriolic content, far more objectionable content that gets amplified, and there is no justification. And you have signed away all your privacy rights to these people. Otherwise, you can't even get onto that platform, Neeraj Atri. That's the situation today. That's how.
But that's why Indian laws have now stepped in. We were a little bit tardy, and I think, handling it with sort of kid gloves. But I think now our laws are in place. And there are court cases, even as we speak, holding some of these platforms accountable. And each geography, I think, has its own legal safeguards in place. But I'm only signaling a deeper danger where it's not just algorithms, but AI, very sophisticated programs are, it's not just Twitter and Facebook.
If they are written to evolve in a certain manner and think in just one particular direction, then we have a serious problem that calls for a larger discussion, but we've run out of time. I thank all our guests. Thank you very much for also joining us on this edition of The Right Stand. We wrap on that note. Zaka ready with brass tacks.
Good evening. Welcome to Rastax. I'm Zaka Jacob. The Aam Aadmi Party has won the MCD election, 134 to the AAP, and the BJP getting 104. While it is a significant victory because the AAP has ousted the BJP, which had a 15-year-long reign at the MCD, it is not quite the kind of landslide that the Aam Aadmi Party was hoping for. Also, the recent corruption allegations seem to be hurting the party because both in Manish Sisodia and in Satyendra Jain's constituencies, the AAP lost. So, what is the big takeaway, the big message from the MCD elections? Is Kejriwal's writ now going to be unchallenged going further in Delhi? And more importantly, now the Aam Aadmi Party can claim its own version of double engine ki sarkar with its party's government both in the state as well as in the MCD. So, that means no more excuses for not solving Delhi's problems, whether it is pollution or the garbage crisis. But first, the story so far.
बीजेपी का भी सहयोग चाहता हूं, इसमें मैं कांग्रेस का भी सहयोग चाहता हूं, मैं सबका सहयोग चाहता हूं। सबके सहयोग से हम दिल्ली को ठीक करेंगे।
भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने बहुत अच्छा चुनाव लड़ा। दिल्ली के लोगों ने भारतीय जनता पार्टी के ऊपर भी भरोसा जताया है। हमने 39% वोट लिए।
प्रचार प्रसार की जीत हुई है और जो जनता के विषय थे, जो मुद्दे थे, वो शायद अभी भी दबे रह गए।
Right, so the big takeaways of the MCD election. Joining me was a very special guest. I spoke to him a little earlier in the day today. Raghav Chadha is the Aam Aadmi Party Member of Parliament and also Delhi boy. Thanks very much for speaking with us, Raghav. The BJP's 15-year reign in the MCD has come to an end. I want to first know from you, how do you see this victory today? Yes, may not have been as much of a landslide as you thought or you hoped it was. Are you tempered by that fact? Or is a win a win? In politics, you go past the halfway mark of 125, you are the winner. It's a winner takes all, first past the post system.
Every single person who calls Delhi its home for once again, blessing the Aam Aadmi Party and blessing Mr. Kejriwal with an opportunity to serve them. Till now, whatever responsibility that was given to Mr. Kejriwal as Chief Minister, be it electricity, be it the sector of healthcare, education, water, so on and so forth, Mr. Kejriwal has delivered. And this